Thank you for joining us, all of you. I think when we started this conversation this evening, 2 or 3 things have come out. I will trust this panel to take it home for all of us, to summarize, to give us the golden nuggets that have come out from a lot of questions that were asked throughout the panel. So can I request one of the organizers to close that door, please? Okay, so, I think enough has been said about India's unique offering in the digital space to the world, which is digital public infrastructure. There is hardly anybody in this room who does not use UPI or, of course, Aadhaar or the India stack. I think this conversation is based on an event, one of the biggest fintech festivals that happened in Mumbai right here about 3 weeks ago, where the Prime Minister of India, along with Prime Minister of UK, and another Prime Minister who was former Prime Minister were present. So it shows the importance that digital finance is happening, is taking shape as a narrative in India. Now, as I said, this conversation is going to be about the Web 3.0. The Web 3.0 stack, let's call it, for lack of a better word, which, as the whole paraphernalia and all these great standees around this room are talking about transparency, trust, enabling innovation, interoperability, privacy by design. Exactly the same principles as India stack is built on, right? So, Sumit, you head DCX. You're one of the large Web 3.0 player. How do you see India and moving into this Web 3.0 stack, if we may call that, and how does it look like for India and the Web 3.0 stack?
Sure, Arvind. I think Web3 stack is now being talked about, but we are at a unique juncture where there is an opportunity in front of us to replicate the success that India has seen in the UPI. And that success is possible, and now we are sitting at that juncture. What I mean to say that is when UPI came, it was an open interoperable payment system which gave payment solution to 1 billion people. And now as things evolve, I think it's also important that we upgrade that stack, and Web3 stack essentially solves for that. In my opinion, it brings the new digital public infrastructure which solves for trust, which solves for openness, transparency at the core of it. And the only thing that is important in this is one, scalability, because you need to have like 18 billion transactions you mentioned in a month, right? That's one problem that needs to be solved. In terms of developers, how can you have more and more developers contributing to the Web3 stack? That's another problem. And then third is the regulations. How does India come up with smart regulations?
We'll come about regulations in the second half of this panel. But so what you are arguing is that a Web 3.0 stack makes sense for India?
Absolutely.
And what does it look like is something that I wanted to hear from you, but maybe we can hold on to the second when we come back again. But that's a very important thing. Beatriz, you join us from Hong Kong today, or you've been in India long enough to become semi-Indian?
I've been here in India for a week now, so very happy to be here.
You have heard throughout the conference that the tokenization of real-world assets.
Yes.
I think it probably got used maybe 100 times since the start of this event. You're doing it every day. You're living that life. As a use case, see, technology always exists. We have been saying that. Sumit will agree, and when I come to Edul, he will agree. It's the use cases. It's in a country like India, which is very diverse, literacy levels, income levels are very diverse. It's the use case which is important. And sometimes the consumers of that use case really don't know what technology they're using, as long as they're happy using that. The layer of abstraction at that level. So, real-world assets.
Yes.
I was told by one senior cabinet minister in India, about 80% of our civil litigation cases are property matters, where there is a title dispute. That's a huge issue in India. So, and what we are hearing is one of the biggest Web 3.0 use case is what you solve for.
Absolutely.
So, and you've studied India over the last 1 week and maybe more. Give us your thoughts on this use case in India. What should India do?
Absolutely. Well, for a little bit of context, the company I work for, Digital Asset, the Canton network, we're responsible for tokenizing over $6 trillion worth of real-world assets. So as you say, this is something that I do every day. And India is an incredibly interesting place to look at. As you said, looking at remittances, land titles, the opportunities for the tokenization journey in India are substantial and hugely significant, more so than any other place in the world at the moment. So I think when you're looking at the tokenization process, what it is that enables is this transparency across multiple different kind of entities, institutions, the workflow. Every single person involved is able to have an end-to-end vision or end-to-end view of what a traditional process look like. With the tokenization process, you can do things like create natively digital assets. So these are new products, new assets that you're able to introduce into a digital world. This has huge opportunities around the land titles as well, or you can actually just digitize traditional assets. So with use cases that we see at the moment and in Hong Kong that we focus on, with the distinction of natively issued assets and then tokenized assets, we look at things like tokenized bonds. So for HSBC, the Hong Kong-based bank, we've done a bond tokenization platform known as HSBC Orion. This has seen huge incremental growth for them, over 45% increase in adoption and in sales from that side of things. So these are just some examples of what tokenizing or digitizing a traditional asset might be able to bring on. And then if you look at something like a natively issued asset, this is the creation of a new product that you're able to put into the digital world. You can think of something like Goldman Sachs. So we have created the Goldman Sachs digital asset platform, and this is where they're able to issue new products, and that as well sees huge incremental growth. So with the case of India, being able to take these different areas and different focus points and being able to bring them into the digital world has huge, huge benefits, not just from a profit perspective or a growth perspective, but actually, the existing way of things being done, you're able to reduce risk, increase growth, increase efficiency, and improve the existing way of doing things, as well as bringing new products into light.
So Beatrice, what you're saying is, if you tokenize property,
yes,
you can fractionalize it and take fractional credit, do fractional ownership.
Absolutely.
And also you cannot, as a consumer, you're protected that your builder cannot amortize that to 5 different banks.
Absolutely. So if you
banks
look at
are comfortable, you are comfortable, it's
everyone's
just the builder is
comfortable.
not comfortable.
Everyone's comfortable. Everyone in that multi-party workflow is comfortable. When you look at the fractionalization process, what you can do is essentially using kind of granular levels of code, you're able to implement levels of privacy. So who within a particular workflow is able to see what? Who is a signatory? Who can verify a transaction? Who has access to visibility? Which kind of regulators or auditors need to be able to see different points of information or parts of information? All of that, when you're talking about the tokenization process, is what is able to be shared across multiple different people and what can be kept private. When you're thinking about these type of multi-party workflows, there is information that, as you say, your bank might necessarily need to see your passport information or where you live, but your neighbor shouldn't be able to do so, or a competing bank shouldn't be able to do so.
Absolutely.
So it's very important, the level of granular privacy that is enabled within a tokenization process to bring the right amount of kind of value and end-to-end value add to the process that you're tokenizing, be it land titles, remittances, bond tokenization, government digital securities. All of these, you're able to kind of get to the granular level of detail and make sure that it's an improved version of before.
Great. Thank you, Beatrice. Edul, I was talking to you offline, and you were talking about remittances. You do run a remittance platform. India is losing, on a back of the envelope calculation, about $8 to $10 billion every year in paying the so-called banks and middlemen on just $150 billion of remittances that we receive. I mean, the global standard is 3%. We pay anywhere from 8 to 10%. This has been the biggest challenge of our diaspora, our talent that moves overseas. Tell us a little bit more, how the world of stablecoins, is that a bad word? Somewhere I heard that's a bad word. I've been writing a lot about it, that India needs to understand the value in stable coins, in off-ramping and on-ramping digital assets, for remittances. What is your view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my opinion, currencies are the first real world assets that have been tokenized, and stablecoins are a representation of that. And the way they work, the way you should think of it is just like how UPI made money transfers close to zero and near instant, stablecoins make cross-border money transfers close to zero fees and near instant. That does everything to cross-border payments what UPI did to local payments. It means that today, at an average,
I would like you to explain this more to this audience. We have kids studying overseas. We still pay a lot of bank fees.
Yeah. Let me just walk you through. Someone who is in UK sending money to India takes 3 to 5 days to send money, costs 3 to 5%. India receives $130 billion of just consumer remittances. Apart from that, $1.7 trillion worth of trade that happens. Across all of this, Indians spend close to $30 billion in fees just to banks, just to move literally our own money. I was reading a conversation somewhere that a person who's working outside India spends a day working just for the bank every month, just to pay the fees to the bank. That's effectively the cost of doing all of this. That's not only that, because the costs are so high, people are anchored to send north of $2,000 or $3,000 back, right? So if the cost of sending every transaction reduces, you can send as low as $10 back to India, and it would still not matter. That's where I think actually things like stablecoins or CBDCs or some chimera in between of those two comes into play, where it makes those transfers very cheap, makes those transfers instant, and those stablecoins coupled with the right convertibility to INR back to fiat on both legs makes them actually usable. So that end-to-end flow is effectively what we've built. Of course, there are a whole bunch of requirements around it, and we'll definitely get to that in the second half of the conversation. But remittances, I think, is by far the largest use case of directly tokenizing a real-world asset that all of us know very well, which is currency.
Great, thank you, Edul. Rachel, I think you are at a C level of one of the largest exchanges in the world. I think from your lens, how do you see India play in this global Web 3.0 perspective? And how does India become a leader? We've been talking about this, India should lead this. But I think you have the key to how should it lead that. So tell us a little bit more of your thoughts.
Yes, as you say, we're in a very privileged position, of being one of the largest exchanges and operating, in over 100 countries. And I'm in a very privileged position of getting to visit and spend time with the communities and retail users, the institutional community and the developer community in many of those markets. And I would argue that India has the greatest competitive edge that I've seen globally at this moment in time.
Nobody is going to doubt you on that.
Greatest competitive edge. You have youth population, the median age being 29, as the speaker just shared prior. You have a world-class developer community representing already over 12% of the Web3 developer community globally. You have over 1,000 Web3 businesses that I know about at this moment in time, and already domestically grown businesses like Polygon, like CoinDCX, that are making regional and global waves. And I think with crypto adoption, India, as everyone knows in this room, crypto adoption is one of the fastest growing in India. And I think what needs to happen as part of that, and it's been great to see this in my visits and during this trip especially, is the commitment to regulatory clarity. I think we're at that pivotal intersection of regulatory evolution, which is going to support the thriving growth of this industry, as well as public and private dialogue around how we work together. And that's not just Binance, that's Binance and CoinDCX working together to ensure that we're educating. But most importantly is narratives. You just asked the question about stablecoins. We need to stop talking about the technology and start focusing on the benefits of the technology. for the different communities that we're targeting, and focus on how it's improving the everyday person's life, the institutional life, the developers. And I think India is in a position where it can build decentralized solutions at scale faster than anywhere else in the world. You've already got that proven digital infrastructure that Sumit you spoke about earlier. So I'm very excited, and while we're very bullish on this industry as Binance, we're very bullish on India being not just a participant in the space, but truly a leader in this global economy and this very ever-changing global economy that we live in at the moment.
Oh, thank you very much, Rachel. I think in the last 5 minutes, what I want to focus is, we've heard a lot of good things, but India is India. We change very fast, but does take a little bit of time still. That fast is the fastest in the world, but still, with the federal system, what are the, and I'm going to reverse if you don't mind. What are some of the key things that we should do now? And I know, everybody talks about regulation not keeping pace with innovation. But, this has been around for a while. We've been, experimenting with it. There are many experiments. There are many startups. There's a lot of funding coming. I just met 2 venture capitalists. I don't see them in the room. They may be striking a deal outside. There is money now that is going into this. But what are if you had to give some thoughts on what India should do both at the national level and at the federal level, from a regulatory policy perspective, to make this happen?
Well, I think firstly, I'm going to talk about this through the lens of the user and through the lens of the ecosystem development. And I think through the lens of the user, the policy and regulation has to be, it cannot be a roadblock to users entering into the space, and it should not create more fear, or it should not push people to alternative decentralized solutions. And I think one of the greatest areas there is around the taxation of users. That is something that, we hosted an event of over 500 of our community last night, and it was a topic that came up with nearly everyone I spoke to afterwards. So I think clarity around that and a more user-first approach is going to be critical. So what I'm
hearing from you, Rachel, and that's a very important point, it's going to, thanks to Money Control, to millions and millions of viewers across the world, is you're not asking for no taxation. You're asking for clarity on taxation.
Clarity on tax, and looking at where the tax ownership falls, whether it's on industry players like us or on the user.
That's a good suggestion. Edul, you're next. As I said, we're going to reverse the order. What are your asks?
No, so I think, in my opinion, what has been true is that the industry has always gone and asked for like a very wide regulatory clarity. But I think what is really needed is that there are now very clearly differently identifiable use cases across the board, right?
So give us 1 or 2 thoughts.
Like for example...
The clock is there. So,
like for example, let's say, how do you regulate the usage of stablecoins or INR-pegged real-world assets in this broader ecosystem? And which is the regulator that takes that up? Is that a similar framework to the digital payments framework that gets followed or not?
And it's been proven that regulated stablecoins actually make a lot of sense. It's create a lot of value. So number 1, regulated stablecoins. 2.
Yeah, of course. I think.
See, you are on TV. You have to ask things which is national implications.
Yeah. I think regulated stablecoins, clarity around exchanges and what their businesses should be, who's allowed to do custody, who's allowed to do brokerage, who's allowed to act as the exchange.
More clarity and regulation around exchanges.
Correct.
Thank you. I'm going to come to you next, Beatrice.
I think mutual objectives. The communication across all the different entities involved in the tech stack. You've got something from a layer 1, you've got tokenization, technology, you've got exchanges. What are the mutual and desired objectives of India as a whole? And when they are decided, then everyone can come together to achieve them. I think that's something that's needed before you start looking at what does the workflow look like from a tokenization perspective, and where is it that India specifically wants to see change.
Great. And you have the last word, my friend.
I have 3 specific points. One is, and I'll make it very clear and straight, one is reduction and rationalization of taxes. It's a big problem, like Rachel mentioned. Number 2, supporting the domestic industry. Right now, a lot of builders are just moving offshore. They don't trust what will happen in India. That needs to be brought back. The talent, we can't afford to have brain drain. And number 3, a structured consultative approach between government and private players. These three comes together, leave the rest to Indian builders and entrepreneurs, they'll do everything to make India the leader.
And then the only thing
And now, after this, you need to talk to Bhupendra, because he's doing that in Sutra.
The only thing I would add on to that, and I think it's something that's very important and needs to be talked about at the forefront, is education. We have to ensure the financial literacy is here to enter into this space in a secure way, because we can educate public
I'm
and
so
private.
glad you brought that into conversation, because I think, it's a two-way street. The industry needs to work together to have set their narrative straight. And I'm speaking, as I said, I was supposed to be moderating, but I'm giving an answer now. The industry also needs to come together. You all said it and speak in the same voice. Biggest challenge as a policymaker is that we hear different versions of the same asks from different people in the industry. So have some unified common minimum programs, as they say in politics. And two is, if I hear correctly from you, is user and financial literacy are what they're dealing with to protect consumer rights.
And meet them where they are, because we know it's every different type of user in this market, and we need to ensure that we're helping them where they are.
We are at the top of the time allocated to us. I can just say that this was the conversation we needed to have at the end, because I think we have summarized not only how India benefits, what India can do to tweak a leadership position, great use cases. I mean, the investment potential is right there. We save all the money that we are giving out to Web 2.0 brokers, I would say, and banks. I didn't want to call them out. And then something on how, not only what, but also on the how, what can be done. So I really thank the four of you for being on this panel, for staying late with us today, and giving us your insights. Thank you very much.